Protectionism. A brief summary of the case is that the United States is restricting trade of solar panels with China, as the U.S. International Trade Commission ruled that the U.S. solar manufacturers are being injured by solar product imports. What the U.S. is doing is protectionism. So our argument is that protectionism does not result in a zero-sum game. That means there are no winners or losers from these protectionist measures. Neither side will benefit from restrictions on international trade. The economic concept applicable here is protectionism. The definition of protectionism is an approach used by government to protect domestic producers. Tariffs are special taxes imposed on imports, making them more expensive. This will reduce demand for imports and increase demand for domestically produced goods. Tariffs can also raise revenue for governments. Another way of reducing imports is placing a physical limit on the amounts allowed into the country. This is called a quota. There are many reasons for protectionism. These reasons include protecting domestic jobs and protecting infant industries from competitors overseas, raising revenues for the government, preventing dumping, as well as improving the current balance. No country wants a severe deficit after all. Another reason of protectionism is that governments don't want the entry of harmful or undesirable goods. The first analysis point focuses on one of the methods of protection, which are tariffs. The USA has used the method of increasing tariffs on solar panels imported from China. The impacts on China will be potentially negative, as they lose its revenue when they export less, as well as an overseas market. As for the US, they may be able to protect domestic companies and raise revenue for the government, but at the same time, households and firms are likely going to spend more money if they rely on solar panels for the provision of energy. Also, they're facing a potential loss of jobs. It is estimated that 88,000 jobs in the US are at risk. This could be due to the fact that when companies have to spend more on purchasing solar panels for energy, they're more likely to cut this cost by laying off more employees.
So this is our second analysis point. China retaliated many American goods as a response. Firstly, what is retaliation? One country erects barriers and then those that are affected do exactly the same in retaliation. There were two countries involved in this trade war. Both of them suffer from loss of free trade. For China, due to the high tariffs, Chinese solar power panels are sold at a higher price in America. According to demand curve, high price results in less demand. Less Americans will continue buying Chinese panels, and Chinese companies may face lower revenues. Thus, Chinese companies tend to export less. Both of them suffer from loss of free trade. For China, due to the high tariffs, Chinese solar power panels are sold at a high price in America. According to demand curve, high price results in less demand. Less Americans will continue buying Chinese panels, and the Chinese companies may face lower revenues. Thus, Chinese companies tend to export less. Second, high price for imports and restricted numbers of imported goods. These are linked together. Chinese government put high tariffs on goods, so imported goods are sold at higher prices. According to demand curve again, there will be less demand to imported goods. If revenue made decreases, some American companies will choose export less. Chinese consumers may face limited choice as a result. For the USA, loss of free trade, decrease of export revenues. These impacts are very similar to those in China, so I will skip the explanation. Restrict development of technology refers to polysilicon but not sure. As the passage suggests, the USA exported polysilicon to China. If America put tariffs on China's solar power panels, Chinese companies are likely to import less polysilicon, the raw material from America. But we need more information for this bid because we are not sure for the USA how important the China market is. We better to have more information about the following. First, how many overseas markets does China have? To see if there is any substitutions of American market. Second, how significant is the USA market to China? In order to determine the impacts of this policy on China. Third, how significant is Chinese market to the USA? This is used to evaluate the impacts from America's perspective. Fourth, how many overseas markets of polysilicon does the USA have? This is to check the impacts on the raw material, polysilicon. Fifth, what contributions do China and the American market make to global renewable energy development? This is used to determine the influence of global renewable energy development, as the article suggests. And finally, our evaluation. First, the USA can use other measures such as subsidies, grants, and incentives to encourage development of domestic solar power industry instead of tariffs. These measures can lower the cost of producing solar power, so the price is decreased and the companies can probably make more profits. Second, China can try to look for other markets, such as those in Europe and Asia, in order to reduce the negative impacts brought by tariffs. Third, also the USA can sell their raw materials to other countries. Fourth, better to end the trade war, promote the development of solar power by competition in order to benefit the global environment.